fire has been one of nature's most important forces throughout human history. It is a force that can bring harm, destruction, and loss of life and property. However, when harnessed and used responsibly, fire has brought us the ability to secure energy sources for heating and lighting, power for machinery in industry and homes, and above all, utilizing fire has brought people the ability to manage their natural world. A return to tradition.
I'm Sheldon Sankey, Fuels Technician with the Bureau of Indian Affairs, Eastern Oklahoma Regional Office. The goal of this video is to promote the prehistorical use of fire while introducing local fire ecology as well as the contemporary fire use of Native Americans. Our focus is to introduce you to the concept of a fire-adapted community. A fire-adapted community is a community that understands fire is part of our natural world, and together they take steps to reduce the risk to their homes and property before a wildfire occurs.
Modern use of fire through prescribed burns, such as those conducted by the Bureau of Indian Affairs fire management teams, provides a return to tradition for many tribal lands throughout Oklahoma. Oklahoma is often at risk for wildfires 10 months out of the year. Prescribed burns benefit these tribal lands and communities by reducing risk to communities, restoring and maintaining healthy ecosystems, removing dense vegetation accumulations that can fuel explosive wildfires, and protecting our culture and natural resources. For example, the removal of the invasive eastern red cedar from prairies, pastures, and forests helps to restore the function of these ecosystems, as well as reduces the hazard as a potential fuel for wildfires. Methods to reduce the hazardous fuels include hand thinning with chainsaws or heavy equipment. Mechanical treatments are most often used in areas where fire has been excluded for long periods of time. Once the heavy accumulation of fuels is reduced, a prescribed burn will follow. Burning decreases potential damage from wildfires. As a homeowner, business, or school in a fire-prone location or high-risk area, you have the opportunity and responsibility to take part in implementing the same type of practices through becoming fire-adapted.
In our prehistorical use of fire, the landscape was less settled. Native villages and towns were naturally fire-resistant, and fire was allowed to burn over large areas without concern. Today, cities are becoming larger, including a growth in urban zones. This zone, called the wildland-urban interface, is where fire comes into conflict with people. In addition to urbanization, droughts are becoming more frequent and intense. Their impact makes wildland fuels extremely dry, causing fuels to behave explosively in a wildfire. With extreme wildfire events on the national news, it's easy to understand the public perception regarding fire as bad and as something to be feared. However, fire has many benefits.
An important aspect of fire ecology is the understanding that some ecosystems require fire to maintain a natural balance with nature. Several species of plants require fire for germination, reproduction, and to become established. Everything from animals to the plants and trees and soil in these ecosystems are affected, dependent upon, and are linked to fire. Removing all fire in fire-adapted ecosystems can lead to eliminating plant species such as those used for traditional healing and cultural medicinal purposes. Full suppression can also eliminate plants that animals depend on, taking away a cultural and traditional food source for some. Continued suppression will eventually cause the buildup of debris, leading to larger and more destructive forest and wildland fires that can ultimately affect you and your property.
It is important to maintain your land and establish protection zones around your home. Remember, we live as a community, so anything that puts your property at risk also increases your neighbor's risk. The most important goal of a fire-adapted landscape is to decrease a fire's fuel source that is connected on, to, or around your home. To establish defensive landscaping, create a map of your home and place it into these 3 zones. Zone 1 includes a perimeter of at least 5 feet out from each side of your home. The focus in this zone is to reduce the potential for flames to come into direct contact with the home.
The following are things to consider when selecting fire-resistant vegetation next to your home in Zone 1. Select plants that are lean, clean, and green, meaning that they exhibit these characteristics. A. Moist and adaptable leaves. Use plants with a high moisture content. B. Plants that leave little to no dead material accumulating around or within the plant. C. Look for deciduous trees and shrubs that have a low sap or resin material, or have water-like sap with little to no odor. D. Green stem plants, as well as drought-tolerant plants. E. Low-growing plants. Avoid low-growing conifers.
Keep in mind that fire-resistant plants are not fireproof, but they do have a higher tolerance and decreased ability to ignite and serve as a fuel source.
Within Zone 1, keep plants well pruned and thinned out, as well as irrigated. Keep lawns mowed low and weed-eat tall grasses around your home. If you have overhanging trees within the 5 feet zone of your home, prune the branches overhead and cut branches 6 to 10 feet up from the ground, as well as removing leaf clutter. Use just enough mulch to keep the weeds suppressed and the soil damp. In a drought, excessively deep mulch can cause fire to smolder and complicate suppression efforts. Use hard landscape items for fuel breaks, such as paver stones, rock retainers, and concrete walkways and driveways to minimize continuous fuels in this zone and to give added protection.
Zone 1 also includes several areas connected to the outside structure of your home. Research has shown that most homes burn in wildfires after the front has passed. Occasionally, homes will burn well in advance of the flaming front. In both cases, it is usually wind-blown embers that carry the ignition right into the home.
Porches, floors, attic, and eave openings should be screened off, as well as crawl spaces and ground vents with a wire mesh screen. Burning embers can travel as far as a mile ahead of a wildfire, posing great risk to these areas if not protected. Keeping roofs and rain gutters free of debris, as well as utilizing a low combustible roofing material, such as Class A shingles, terracotta, or metal, will help decrease ignition. Any exposed wood surfaces should be properly treated. Fire-resistant construction, including brick, cement, concrete, stucco, and plaster, can resist heat and flame. Windows that are tempered and double-paned also help protect your home against heat and flame during a wildfire. Maintain any attached structures on your home, such as decking or fencing, as they are also combustible. Some communities have taken proactive measures in fire codes by not allowing wood fences to connect to homes.
Zone 2 begins from 5 feet out to at least 30 feet of your home's perimeter. The goal in this zone is to maintain landscaping so that fire is only able to consume light amounts of surface fuels.
Trees and shrubs in this perimeter of your property should be spaced adequately enough so that if introduced to flame or ignition, the flames cannot easily jump from one tree or shrub to the next. Maintaining this zone is important. Ladder fuels, which are vines, shrubs, and other growth upwards or under a tree trunk, should be avoided and removed. This prevents a surface fire from climbing up a tree towards branches and leaves, preventing increasing flame size and intensity. Prune trees in this area 6 to 10 feet up from the ground level, or a better rule of thumb is to keep trees pruned 1/3 of its height. The layout of shrubs, vegetation, and trees in this zone should be made in a manner that if ignited by embers, the resulting flame or heat will not touch your home's exterior surface and will not be a threat. If you have firewood at or near your home, this zone is a good place to store this combustible fuel source. Firewood should be stored off the ground and at least 30 feet away from the home. Remember to keep this area around wood storage piles or any other structures such as sheds, clean and clear of debris and leaf litter. Keep lawns irrigated. Also, keep weeds mowed and grass cut low in this zone to help create another barrier for rapidly spreading fires.
The first line of defense during a wildfire is to work and maintain extended property boundaries from 30 feet of your home's perimeter outwards. The goal is to reduce both the speed and the energy of an approaching wildfire before it reaches your home.
Vegetation in this zone is furthest from the home structure and blends into the natural area. Take steps to clear brush and thin the trees in this area so that the fire is forced down towards the ground, resulting in progressively smaller flames. Vegetation in this area can be mechanically removed with a chainsaw or small tractor. Once the trees and brush are cut, they should be piled in small piles and burned or chipped. A permit may be needed to burn brush piles or small controlled burns on your land. Your local fire department may be able to assist with controlled burns. If possible, maintain a 10 to 15 foot wide strip or path around the outside of Zone 3. This strip serves as a fuel break for wildfires approaching the home. It can be planted with cool seasonal grasses for winter fire protection and can be disked or tilled during periods of very high or extreme danger. Consider returning to tradition by safely using fire to promote the historical ecology. Managed landscapes and forests provide some of the best defenses against wildfires, and they help your community become more fire adapted.
Our native ancestors worked together as a community when a threat approached. Today, we are tasked with working together to develop adequate fire suppression resources through these actions. Promote fire-safe landscaping and building materials. Establish codes and ordinances. Reduce hazardous fuels in common or public areas. Designate evacuation routes and safety zones. Develop a community wildfire protection plan. A disaster plan is best planned before the actual fire occurs, as time is precious, and a good disaster plan and emergency access procedures can save lives.
As an individual, you'll need to take on the responsibility to develop a disaster plan. It starts by knowing your area, the evacuation routes, and discussing what actions you will take with the family, neighbors, and your community. Have more than one evacuation route if possible. Having emergency supplies such as shovels, rakes, axes, chainsaws, and a water supply source in an evacuation situation is important. Practicing family and neighborhood fire drills will help your area succeed in saving time and lives. To protect your family and home in case of a wildfire in your area, close all the entrances to your home, including the garage and windows, to prevent interior flammables from igniting. Dress for protection by wearing cotton or wool clothing, including long pants and shirts, as well as by wearing gloves and face protection. If you use natural gas or propane, turn it off at the meter or source. If time allows, wet your roof and immediate area around your home with water. Remember to obey all rules of fire personnel in the area and never drive into a grass or wildland fire scene. Work together with your community and individually to ensure that there are clearly marked legible street names, street signs, and home numbers for emergency responders. If possible, try to provide at least a 12-foot wide driveway with a 15-foot vertical clearance for emergency vehicles.
Fire-adapted communities take time, effort, and maintenance from everyone in your area. Understanding the information in this video will help create a safe, aware, and protected community. More importantly, fire-adapted communities can save property and lives in the long run. Do your part by being prepared and becoming fire-adapted. It all begins with you.
For further information, please visit the following websites: your local fire departments and your local forestry departments.